So I'm a dude in my early 30s, mustache, a beard, I have kids, and somehow, some way the other day, I randomly got a pimple near my chin. I don't understand how this works. Why is my body doing this? Somebody please explain it to me. I could always just, like hop on Google and research why it is that I got a pimple in my early 30s. I mean, I always thought that was more of like a thing that you go through when you're in your teens. And I'm sure that Google could just explain everything to me, but then that would actually require a decent amount of effort on my part. And we all know that that's not going to happen. But anyways, let's get serious here for a second. Enough talk about pimples and puberty. Let's get straight into it because I wanted to make a quick little video. Well, it's not going to be that quick, but I wanted to make a video for you guys where I talked about some cool Marvel Legends action figures that I feel like have gone under the radar. These aren't like quote unquote underrated Marvel Legends action figures, but I do feel like these are some Marvel Legends figures that you need to pick up right now. I think there's going to be a little bit of a boom with some of these action figures. They're either underrated, they're really affordable, they're on sale for the most part, or there are some big projects on the way that I feel like could potentially make a lot of these action figures spike and go up in value. So, I count myself in that group. Sometimes you're on the fence about something, you're being a little bit patient, you're waiting for it to drop a few bucks because it's a character or a figure that you want, but you don't desperately need it. And I feel like now is the prime opportunity for you guys to pick up some of these because, as I mentioned, I think they're going to go up in value, they're going to go up in price, and they're only going to get even more difficult to acquire down the line. The first one that I wanted to get into is the Deluxe Marvel Legends Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is the big giant deluxe version with the wings. Now, personally, I don't own this figure. I didn't pick up any of the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 figures, but as I mentioned prior, we do know that there are future potential projects regarding the Guardians of the Galaxy. And so if they do decide to have Groot return in this particular form, it could make the collectible a little bit more desirable to a lot of collectors. Now, it is worth mentioning at the end, I believe Groot goes through like one last transformation. He's like this big giant behemoth. So I'm not sure if that's going to be his look going forward in the MCU if they decide to keep him in the MCU anyways. So I'm very interested to see exactly where this figure lands. Now, I think originally this was supposed to be like a $40 figure, but if you're looking to pick them up right now, I have seen some eBay listings for as low as like low 20s. I think there was some for like 23, 24, even as high as $30. But if you bought multiples, which I don't know why you would buy multiples of these figures, but if you did want to save on the back end, you could always purchase them and then, I don't know, trade some of the extras that you pick up. But I think if you pick up 3 of these from this seller, you would end up paying about like low 20s, like $22, $23, which is an absolutely killer deal for a Marvel Legends deluxe action figure. Just throwing it out there in case you guys want it. The next figure that I actually wanted to talk about is, it's a Marvel Legends that we've actually mentioned, I think like at least a handful of times within the last month or so. We're talking about the Marvel Legends retro carded Green Goblin. I know for a fact, well, I shouldn't say I know for a fact, but I do know that they're eventually going to release an upgraded version of Green Goblin, and it's going to be something more accurate to the comic books. This one is, I guess, a more accurate representation to the animated series. It is in that beautiful retro card. It's lacking a little bit of paint. It mostly feels like it's just the color of the plastic. However, as I mentioned, it's just a classic representation of Green Goblin. If you want something to stand in there with your animated Spider-Man and, your animated Rhino, so on and so forth, I think this is a perfect action figure for you. It is also worth mentioning that there was like a long stretch of time where this figure was garnering resale value of upwards of like, I don't know, $140. I think I saw some really high listings at about that price point. They eventually settled around like low 100s, like 100 to 120, 130. Still, that's a ridiculous price, and I definitely feel for all those collectors that decided to buy a Green Goblin during that period of time, because eventually Hasbro would come in and just stick it to the action figure flippers, to the scalpers. They would essentially reissue the figure. It's the same exact figure that got released all those years ago. It's the exact same one. There are no upgrades. There's no, new tech, no new pinless technology or anything like that, which is why I say pick it up now, sooner rather than later, because I think eventually we will be getting an updated classic retro Goblin. We always know that at least every single year we're going to get, like, I don't know, 10 different Spider-Man villains, and I think Green Goblin is one of those that is just an absolute prime candidate for just a massive upgrade. Next up, I thought that I would include basically the entire first wave of the Secret Wars Marvel Legends action figure line because, well, they're all great action figures. I personally just picked up the symbiote Spider-Man, and even though it isn't like the most perfect representation of Spider-Man, I think there are like at least two other body molds that I would have loved to seen that I would have loved to seen instead of this particular body mold. It is still one of the best symbiote action figures out there. It comes with an extra head sculpt, extra hands, and I'm just pleasantly surprised to see all of these still widely available. I think I checked Entertainment Earth. They were still available at about retail. Same thing with Big Bad Toy Store. I think even Amazon might have had a couple of these at retail, but I don't know. I think it's insane because Secret Wars definitely did have a little bit of a cult following back in the day. They still have the Captain America widely available, the symbiote Spider-Man, even Wolverine. Let's hypothetically say that you're not into the comic book storyline and you also don't really care about the retro action figures that were released way back in the day in this style of packaging. You can just pick these up as like good solid representations of those characters. Like you have Captain America and all of those classic colors. Same thing with Iron Man, symbiote Spider-Man. I mean, they're just classic looking characters, and I think they can fit into almost any display, not just in a Secret Wars collection. It's also worth mentioning that Hasbro does plan on releasing way more action figures in this Secret Wars line. We already have confirmation that we're getting an Iceman from the Secret Wars universe, so I'm very excited to see what they decide to give us next. And as I said, I'm just shocked because there was a time when a lot of these retro carded, like Captain America's, Spider-Man action figures, Wolverines, they would sell out. They would be incredibly difficult to find. You would have to usually go through the secondary seller marketplace and have to purchase your figures that way. And so it's just nice to see them still at retail. Okay, I definitely suggest you guys pick these up because the deeper we go into the Secret Wars universe, I think there may be a slight possibility that some of these start to sell out and then eventually they become way more difficult to find in the future. Next up, I thought that we would talk about an action figure that I actually reviewed about a month ago on the channel. We're talking about the first appearance Ultimate Fallout Miles Morales action figure. This is a part of, I guess, that mini comic book action figure wave. I think that's what they're referring to it as now. As of the moment of this recording, they do have a secondary wave coming very soon. We're getting a new Rachel Summers. We're getting a couple of other crazy action figures in that particular line. So I'm very, very much excited to see what that line has in store for the future. Now, I've said this before, I could care less about the tiny little mini comic books. They can keep that. I don't really care about them, but this honestly might be one of the I think it is the end all Miles Morales for the time being. The articulation on this figure is just on a completely different level. Amazing butterfly joints. They cut really deep forward and backwards, so his arms can articulate incredibly well. It does have that double ab articulation, pinless technology everywhere. I know that the fact that these hips look really weird and they pop out make a lot of people second guess whether they should actually pick up this Miles Morales. But look, aside from the hips, aside from the plastic being slightly gummy sometimes, or at least with my particular action figure, I felt like the plastic was a little bit weird and gummy. But aside from those two things, I think this is one of the best Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figures ever, and this is for sure the best Miles Morales action figure that you can go out and get right now. It's still at retail. I think if you go on eBay, you can find it for about like $25 to $30. If you go on Big Bad Toy Store or Entertainment Earth, with shipping and everything, you're paying about like low 30s, which is still at retail. I think some people are still finding it at their local Walmarts and Targets. So it's still a figure that's readily available, but pick it up now. I think this is one of those that is just going to garner way more attention the more and more people review it and pick it up, I think it's going to start to get a little bit more of a following, and it's definitely going to get a little bit more difficult to find within the next few months or within the next year. As I mentioned, Hasbro does plan on continuing this little mini comic book action figure run, and so like I said, it's only going to get more and more attention as time goes by, and it's definitely a figure that I think everybody that collects action figures or Marvel Legends in general should definitely have in their display. Next up, I thought that I would show a little bit of love to the Across the Spider-Verse action figures, or I should say Marvel Legends from Hasbro. These are some pretty interesting figures. Now, when they first came out, I was kind of on the fence about them. I do have the Into the Spider-Verse action figure first wave, and I'm very happy with those. But when I first saw these, I don't know, I had my reservations about them. They're a little bit weird, no butterfly joints, single hinge at the mid-torso. I just don't love the articulation scheme. Some of these just didn't come with enough accessories, in my personal opinion. Now, I love the retro card. I love the art on these, and you know, if I could, I would purchase extra ones and just hang them on my wall, which is something that I still might do in the foreseeable future. But I don't know. I think people have kind of slept on this particular wave. Not to mention, we do know that the sequel is planned to release, I think, in 2026, in the summer of 2026, which means it's right around the corner. And we know exactly what happens whenever there's a sequel or a different project right around the corner, especially when the trailer finally drops. I think it's going to make these figures kind of pop and get a ton of attention. Everybody's going to flock to them. There's going to be like this giant demand for these figures. There's going to be a little bit of some bottleneck action here. And so I think now is the perfect opportunity to pick up all of these figures. Most of these are retailing for, or I should say, they're going for under retail. I think I saw the Spider-Man, the regular Spider-Man for Across the Spider-Verse going for like $17 to $18 on eBay. All of these you can find at retail through like Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, Amazon, so on and so forth. They're just really affordable. You can find the Gwen sometimes for about $20. You can find 2099 Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara for, I don't know, low 20s. I mean, most of them, as I said, they hover around retail or a little bit under. So I think now is the prime opportunity to pick these up. If you've ever been on the fence, or if you've ever thought about picking them up, or if you're still waiting for them to drop a little bit, I think that patience has paid off. Okay, pick them up now, because as I mentioned, within the next few months, once the hype starts to pick up, I do feel like there's a pretty good possibility that people just rush in and try to purchase as many of these as they possibly can. Some of them just for their own collection, but we know that there are always action figures, scalpers, and flippers out there that are most likely going to try to make some money off of these. Another prime example of a very interesting action figure that has actually not garnered a big giant following. It's not being resold on the secondary marketplace for a profit, and it's still readily available at essentially full retail here. We're talking about the Scarlet retro carded Spider-Man action figure. This is one that, well, I should say the one that came before it, its predecessor, was completely outdated, but it was highly sought after. It was highly coveted. There were a ton of people on eBay trying to make customs. There are some better action figures out there, but those are usually imported figures. You have like Moffic, so on and so forth, and those usually go for about like 80 to 110 to 120. So this is your best option at an affordable rate. If you guys are interested in this figure, I've seen some of these sell for under retail on eBay, but if you just want to pay retail, you're paying about like $25 to $30 on the secondary marketplace. Or if you want to go through Entertainment Earth, Big Bad Toy Store, that figure is still available at full retail, which is crazy. I would think that this would be one of those figures that would sell out and garner quite a bit of attention. It's also worth mentioning that this figure does have a lot of the new tech, like pinless articulation. It has the toe hinge. The mid-torso articulation was really well designed. It was really well engineered. You would have thought because of the jacket design on the upper torso, or I should say the mid-torso, it would really hinder articulation, but they did a very good job of overall putting the figure together. You get, I believe, 6 hands total, so it's everything that you would basically need for a Spider-Man action figure. Now, I'm not 100% sure if Hasbro has just decided to indefinitely continue manufacturing this figure and restocking it, but as I've said before, it has gone out of stock here and there for like brief periods of time, but then eventually it does become widely available. But as I mentioned, if you are a big big Spider-Man fan and you need a Scarlet Spider in your display, this is just as good as it's going to get at that $25 to $30 price point. And unlike some of the action figures on today's video or today's list, where some of these are due for some big upgrades, like I already mentioned the Green Goblin, for example, but here with this particular figure, I don't see them reissuing or retooling this version anytime in the foreseeable future. It's going to be one of those that, you know, you have to wait for like 5 to 6 years before you get the next upgrade. So I think now is just a perfect opportunity, a perfect window to pick up this killer figure. Next up, I thought that we would talk about the newest Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figure, even though I guess this is based on the No Way Home figure. Well, they've had different monikers here and there, but it's essentially the same figure with the unmasked head sculpt, if you guys want to pick that particular version up. Now, they have been going back and giving us some of those classic figures. We have a black suited Tobey Maguire, we have the Tobey Maguire from the No Way Home film, and so on and so forth. We've received a number of different villains, but this one to me kind of has always stuck out because when this first hit stores and digital store shelves, this figure was kind of flying off, and I remember it's reselling for like $60 to $70 for a good stretch of time. Eventually there was a restock, and then now you can kind of find them on eBay and through some small online retailers for about like $35 to $40. But I think this is one of those figures that has flown under the radar now for quite some time. It's a phenomenal looking head sculpt. I love the body mold here. You're getting some great butterfly joints. You get that double mid ab articulation, pinless technology all around, and I just love the sculpt here. There's a ton of detail, and they really went above and beyond when it comes down to this Andrew Garfield figure. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's potentially my favorite design in terms of Spider-Man. I mean, the Tobey Maguire trilogy will always be near and dear to my heart, but there was something about that Andrew Garfield suit in both Spider-Man films that just kind of drew me in. I just love the design. I love the aesthetics. I love everything about it. And to have him in action figure form was just absolutely phenomenal. It is worth mentioning that they have released this version, I think, twice. There was that No Way Home triple pack, and then eventually they decided to reissue those figures or re-release them with unmasked head sculpts in a retro carded setting. So it really depends on which version you want. I think it's the exact same body mold. I think the retro carded just comes with the unmasked head sculpt. Now, but just in my personal opinion, I think now is a prime opportunity to pick this figure up. It's still widely available. It hasn't gone up too much on the secondary market. As I've said, I ran across some eBay listings that had it at about $35 with shipping and taxes. Maybe it bumps up to like $38 because it was with free shipping. So it's still pretty affordable, but I think as time goes by, as more people start to appreciate the Andrew Garfield films, I do believe that people will want this figure. There are also some rumors floating around that Andrew Garfield could reprise his role as Spider-Man. We don't know exactly to what extent. We know that there's at least one more Tom Holland film upcoming, and there are some rumors that he could be featured in that film or in the foreseeable future, maybe in like a comic book or something along those lines. And we know anytime that somebody or a film or a franchise tries to make a little bit of a comeback, people want to gravitate towards the old collectibles, and this is definitely one of those that I feel like has a pretty good chance of garnering more of a following as time goes by. And then lastly, I wanted to show some love to some Spider-Man centric characters, and even though this is technically a Gamerverse action figure, I do believe that she fits into multiple different displays, and I'm talking about the Gamerverse PlayStation Universe Black Cat action figure. This was released a few months ago, and if you guys are interested in picking her up, she's still going for retail about $25 to $27 at retail, but you're probably paying closer to about $30. But still, this is potentially, at the time, it was the best female character that Hasbro had ever done. It has like a ball joint at the hair, so the hair is actually articulated, that double ab articulation. I believe it has butterfly joints. Great accessories. This figure can get into some very intricate poses. It's very rare to see female characters get love, not just from Hasbro, but just in general. McFarlane has also ran into the exact same problem. And as I mentioned, it is a Gamerverse action figure, but I think as time goes by, people will just learn to appreciate it more and more, especially because we don't have a proper Black Cat action figure. I think the last one that we received was in that retro carded packaging from like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's definitely been quite some time, and that one is still using the older female body mold. So this one to me is just a prime example of something that you can kind of throw into your comic book display, even though it's based on the video game. And let's be honest, those video game figures don't always fit into like all action figure displays, but this one, as I said, can kind of cross over because she just has that like perfectly prototypical design of Black Cat. As I said, you guys can still find her at retail, so I think now is the perfect opportunity to pick it up before we start to potentially see her in a live action film. We already know anytime there's a live action project and there's a new character featured, everybody wants to flock and pick up, first appearances in comic book form, any type of media, any type of collectibles, action figures, and things of that nature. So there's a high possibility that within the next year, with the new Tom Holland film hitting screens, that we do see a Felicia Hardy in on screen, and then this eventually makes this figure spike and makes it a little bit more difficult to find in person. And then a quick FYI, I wanted to end today's video with giving you guys a couple of updates on the channel. I know I've been teasing this for quite some time, but we do plan on doing the giveaway within like the next week. I'm going to try to sneak it in next week, although we do also, which I guess is kind of another sneak peek, we do have a little trip that is planned out for next week. Hopefully we're able to make a little Disneyland quick trip, and I'm going to be in California, so I will be doing some action figure hunting there in California. I'll take you guys along on my journey. I suppose it'll be closer to like what a vlog would be, but we'll still do some action figure hunting along the way, and we will be trying to do some figure hunting there at downtown Disneyland. So stick around. We have a lot of fun and exciting things. There are some other projects that I'm still waiting to kind of, build up a little bit more. They're obviously for the channel, to make the channel better. And so those things are in the working. Once they're kind of close to fruition, I'll start to kind of reveal more details for you guys. As always, if you guys want to support the channel, you guys can just do the simple stuff. Hit the like button, subscribe, keep up to date with the channel. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. That's very important. When you guys leave a comment, it kind of, starts a conversation, and it starts the entire community. It kind of gets the entire community more engaged. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to stay safe out there. Enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, play around with them, all that fun stuff. Sometimes we forget to just enjoy the little things like posing action figures, photographing them, doing stop motion, whatever it is that you're into when it comes down to action figures. Do it. Take a few moments out of the day just to enjoy them. Stay safe out there. Stay tuned. There's a ton of fun stuff coming your guys' way, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.